The fluorescent lights of Grand Foods hummed a monotonous tune, a stark contrast to the thumping bass of the exclusive Manhattan clubs Thomas McCown frequented. He was supposed to be at a charity gala, rubbing shoulders with the city's elite, but a sudden craving for artisanal olive oil had detoured him to this mundane supermarket. As he browsed the gourmet aisle, a familiar laugh, light and musical, drifted from the checkout lanes. It was a laugh he hadn't heard in 6 months, a laugh that once filled his sprawling penthouse with joy, now echoing in the sterile air of aisle 5. His heart, usually a steady drumbeat of ambition, hitched. He looked up, and his world, meticulously constructed on a foundation of wealth and carefully guarded secrets, began to fracture. There, swiping groceries with practiced ease, was Amelia, his wife, and she was undeniably pregnant. Thomas McCown, a man whose name was synonymous with innovation and aggressive takeovers in the tech world, felt a cold dread seep into his bones. His initial thought was that it was a cruel mirage, a trick of his mind, but the soft curve of her belly, visible even beneath the loose-fitting Grand Foods uniform, was undeniably real. And then his gaze shifted slightly to the side. Standing just behind Amelia's register, pretending to examine a display of chewing gum, was Sarah, his assistant, and his current mistress. Her eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were wide with a mix of shock and something Thomas couldn't quite decipher. Perhaps a flicker of triumph? A wave of nausea washed over Thomas. He clutched a bottle of exorbitant truffle oil, the glass cold against his clammy palm. Amelia. Pregnant. Working as a cashier. The sheer absurdity of it was like a punch to the gut. Their divorce had been messy, a protracted battle fought through high-powered lawyers and veiled threats. He had believed it was finalized, the papers signed and sealed, the chapter closed. He had moved on, or so he thought, into the arms of the ambitious Sarah, who offered a sleek, uncomplicated companionship that suited his busy life. He remembered the last conversation he'd had with Amelia, 6 months ago. It had been an explosion of accusations and recriminations in their penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park. Thomas had been furious about her persistent questions regarding his late nights and vague business trips. He'd thrown his accusations of her growing distance, her perceived lack of understanding for his demanding career. The argument culminated in his declaration that he wanted out, that he couldn't live like this anymore. Amelia, her face pale but resolute, had simply said, "Fine, Thomas. If that's what you truly want, then so be it." He hadn't seen her since, save for the impersonal exchanges between their legal teams. He'd assumed she'd gone back to her parents in Vermont, as she often threatened during their fights. He'd sent a generous settlement, more than enough to set her up comfortably. Or so he believed. Now seeing her here, a cashier in a brightly lit supermarket, pregnant, shattered every one of his assumptions. It wasn't just the betrayal of her silence about the pregnancy, it was the stark reality of her situation. Amelia, who had once graced magazine covers by his side, who had curated art collections and hosted elegant dinner parties, was now scanning groceries. The image of her, vibrant and full of life, entertaining foreign dignitaries in their opulent living room, clashed violently with the mundane reality before him. The discrepancy was too vast, too painful to reconcile. He watched her, transfixed. Her movements were fluid, efficient, almost graceful, despite the visible discomfort of her pregnancy. She smiled at a customer, a genuine warm smile that reached her eyes, eyes that had once sparkled with adoration for him. A pang of something akin to regret, sharp and unexpected, pierced through his carefully constructed armor. He had dismissed her as a pampered socialite, dependent on his wealth, but here she was, undeniably self-sufficient, albeit in the most unexpected and humiliating way imaginable. Sarah, sensing his sudden paralysis, subtly moved closer, her hand lightly grazing his arm. "Thomas, are you all right?" she whispered, her voice laced with an artificial concern that grated on his nerves. He shrugged her off, his gaze still fixed on Amelia. Sarah's eyes followed his, and a flicker of something unreadable crossed her features before settling into a mask of placid indifference. Thomas felt a surge of irrational anger. Anger at Amelia for keeping this from him, anger at himself for being so blind, and a simmering, dangerous anger at Sarah, who was clearly aware of this situation and had kept it a secret. How long had she known? How many times had she driven past this very supermarket, seen Amelia, and said nothing? The thought churned in his stomach, sour and bitter. The carefully curated image of his life, of his effortless control, was crumbling, and the architect of its destruction was not a business rival or a market crash, but a woman he had discarded, now carrying his child. The fluorescent lights of Grand Foods seemed to grow brighter, hotter, illuminating the uncomfortable truths he had meticulously buried. Thomas felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. He knew he couldn't confront Amelia here, not in front of Sarah, not in front of a dozen unsuspecting shoppers. The scene would be a disaster, a public spectacle that would inevitably find its way into the tabloids. His reputation, so carefully cultivated, would be in tatters. He had to be strategic. He had to understand. He pulled Sarah away from the checkout lanes, his grip on her arm surprisingly firm. "We need to go," he muttered, his voice hoarse. Sarah, ever the poised professional, managed a tight, almost imperceptible nod. "Of course, Thomas. Is everything all right?" Her eyes, however, betrayed a deeper knowledge, a knowing glint that confirmed his burgeoning suspicions. Once they were safely in the tinted privacy of his luxury SUV, Thomas turned to her, his voice low and dangerous. "You knew, didn't you?" Sarah met his gaze, her expression carefully neutral. "Knew what, Thomas?" "Don't play coy with me, Sarah. Amelia, pregnant, working at a supermarket. You saw her, didn't you? You knew." His voice rose, betraying the raw anger simmering beneath his controlled exterior. Sarah sighed, a theatrical gesture that only fueled his rage. "Thomas, please, keep your voice down. We're in public." She paused, then continued, her voice soft, almost regretful. "Yes, Thomas. I saw her. A few weeks ago, actually. I was running an errand." "And you didn't think to tell me?" he demanded, his jaw clenched. She looked away, her gaze fixed on the bustling New York street outside. "What would have been the point, Thomas? You and Amelia are divorced. It's not my place, not your place," he scoffed. "She's pregnant with my child, Sarah, and she's working as a cashier. Do you have any idea how that looks? How it makes me look?" The words tumbled out, raw and unfiltered, revealing the true core of his concern, his image, his carefully constructed persona. Sarah finally turned back to him, her eyes wide, feigning shock. "Your child? Thomas, are you sure? The divorce was finalized months ago. Are you certain it's yours?" The question hung in the air, a venomous insinuation designed to sow doubt. Thomas stared at her, a cold realization dawning on him. The way she had so readily suggested it wasn't his, the almost eager tone in her voice, it was too carefully crafted. "What are you implying, Sarah?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. She shrugged, a small dismissive gesture. "Only that." "Well, people move on, Thomas. Amelia is a beautiful woman. It wouldn't be surprising if she found someone else." The insinuation stung, not because he believed it, but because it exposed Sarah's true colors. She wasn't just his mistress. She was a calculated opportunist, willing to twist truths to maintain her position. He remembered the subtle ways she had always undermined Amelia, the casual remarks about her perceived weaknesses, her frivolous interests, her lack of understanding for his vision. He had dismissed them as harmless, the petty jealousies of a woman vying for his attention. Now they took on a darker, more sinister meaning. "Get out," he said, his voice flat. Sarah blinked, clearly taken aback. "Thomas," I said, "get out, Sarah, now." He pointed to the curb. Her carefully constructed composure finally cracked. "Thomas, what is this? After everything we've been through, I'm just trying to help you." "You helped yourself, Sarah. You watched my wife, pregnant with my child, struggle, and you said nothing. Worse, you tried to poison my mind. Get out." He opened the car door, his gaze unyielding. Reluctantly, with a final, withering glare, Sarah exited the SUV. As she slammed the door shut, Thomas felt a strange mix of relief and a deeper, more unsettling despair. He had pushed away the woman who, for months, had been his confidant, his lover, his escape. But in doing so, he had stripped away another layer of the carefully constructed lies he had been living. He drove aimlessly through the city, the vibrant lights of Times Square blurring into an incoherent streak. His mind raced, replaying every interaction with Amelia, every argument, every moment of perceived distance. He had been so consumed by his ambition, by the relentless pursuit of more, that he had become blind to the woman who loved him, the woman he had promised to cherish. He pulled over near a deserted park, the Manhattan skyline glittering coldly in the distance. He remembered Amelia's quiet strength, her unwavering integrity. He had always seen her as fragile, a delicate flower needing his protection, his wealth. But her presence at the supermarket, her quiet determination, belied that image. She was a survivor, and she was doing it without him. The question of why gnawed at him. Why was she working? He had given her a substantial settlement, more than enough for her to live comfortably for years. Had she refused it? Had his lawyers somehow botched the paperwork? Or was there something else, something deeper, that he was missing? He pulled out his phone, his fingers hovering over the contact for his lawyer. No, not yet. He needed to talk to Amelia first. He needed to understand. The first step, however, was finding her. He knew she wouldn't be at their old apartment, and she hadn't gone to Vermont. She was here, in this city, living a life he couldn't fathom, a life he had unwittingly forced upon her. He felt a chilling sense of foreboding. The collapse of his world was just beginning. Thomas spent the next few days in a haze of restless energy and gnawing guilt. He couldn't focus on work, couldn't shake the image of Amelia at the checkout. He had his private investigator, a discreet but highly effective man named Leo, discreetly track her down. It took Leo less than 24 hours to find her, confirming that she was indeed living in a modest but clean apartment in a quiet residential neighborhood in Queens, a far cry from their opulent Manhattan penthouse. Armed with her address, Thomas drove to Queens, his heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and determination. He found the building, a red brick structure with a small, well-tended garden out front. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the frantic beat of his pulse. He was Thomas McCone, a man who commanded respect, who orchestrated multi-million-dollar deals. Yet, approaching this modest apartment door, he felt like a nervous teenager. He knocked, the sound echoing unnaturally loud in the quiet hallway. After a moment, the door creaked open. Amelia stood there, her eyes widening in surprise as she saw him. The pregnancy was more pronounced now, her belly a gentle curve beneath a comfortable maternity dress. Her hair, usually styled immaculately, was tied back in a simple ponytail, and there were faint shadows beneath her eyes. Yet, even with the fatigue, her inherent grace and quiet dignity shone through. "Thomas," she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "What are you doing here?" "Amelia, we need to talk," he began, trying to keep his voice steady. She sighed, a weary sound. "I don't think we have anything to talk about." She started to close the door, but Thomas quickly placed his hand on the frame, preventing it. "Please, Amelia, just 5 minutes. I saw you at Grand Foods." Her eyes hardened. "So, you finally decided to grace the working class with your presence, Thomas? What, did you run out of caviar?" Her sarcasm was a thin shield, but it stung. "Amelia, I didn't know," he pleaded, pushing past her gently into the small but tastefully decorated living room. The apartment was simple, a far cry from their previous lavish lifestyle. But it had a warmth, a personal touch that their penthouse had always lacked. He noticed a small, intricately carved wooden cradle in the corner, a stark reminder of the life they had created. She wrapped her arms around her stomach, a protective gesture. "Didn't know what, Thomas? That I'm pregnant? That I'm working?" Which part exactly eludes the great Thomas McCown? "Both. Everything. I thought you went to Vermont. I thought the divorce was final. I sent a settlement, a very generous one, by the way. What happened to it?" The questions tumbled out, urgent and demanding. Amelia's eyes flashed with anger. "The settlement? Thomas, your lawyers, in their infinite wisdom, managed to tie up every single asset. They froze my accounts, citing disputed claims and financial irregularities that magically appeared after I refused to sign a confidentiality agreement that would have effectively silenced me about everything." Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the raw hurt beneath her anger. Thomas stared at her, dumbfounded. "What? That's impossible. I specifically instructed my lawyers to ensure your financial security. I wanted to be fair." "Fair?" she scoffed. "Fair, Thomas, is not having your entire life savings locked away by a predatory legal team simply because you refuse to be bought and silenced. Fair is not being forced to take a job because you literally have no access to your own money." She gestured around the small apartment. "This, Thomas, is what fair looks like when you're dealing with the Thorn Empire." A cold knot formed in Thomas's stomach. His lawyers. He had given them carte blanche, instructed them to handle it efficiently, to protect his interests. He had been so consumed by his desire to move on, to erase Amelia from his life, that he hadn't scrutinized the details. He had implicitly trusted his legal team to execute his wishes, not to actively sabotage Amelia. But now, connecting the dots, he saw the chilling truth. His legal team, accustomed to his ruthless business tactics, had likely interpreted protect his interests as destroy the opposition. "I swear, Amelia, I had no idea," he said, his voice barely a whisper. I would never have wanted you to go through this." She looked at him, her eyes searching his, trying to discern the truth. "No? Then tell me, Thomas, why did you have your lawyers draw up a prenuptial agreement that, in the event of a divorce, would have left me with practically nothing if I left you? And why did you then accuse me of financial mismanagement when I refused to sign it?" Thomas flinched. The prenup. That had been a preemptive measure, something his business partners had insisted on, a standard procedure for a man of his wealth. He had presented it to Amelia casually, dismissing her concerns about its harsh terms. He had never truly believed they would use it, never believed their marriage would crumble. He had seen it as a formality, a legal safeguard. But now, in the harsh light of their reality. It was a weapon. I don't know, Amelia. It was standard procedure, I thought. My advisors insisted. He knew it sounded weak, a pathetic excuse. Your advisors, she repeated, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. Always your advisors, Thomas. Never you. Never your own conscience. She paused, her gaze fixed on him. And then, there's the other thing, isn't there, Thomas? The real reason I couldn't accept your generous settlement, even if I could access it. He braced himself, dreading what was to come. Amelia took a deep breath, her voice low and steady. Thomas, remember that charity gala 6 months ago? The one you were supposedly too busy to attend, claiming you had a crucial business meeting in Geneva. He remembered. It was the night he had spent with Sarah, celebrating a successful deal, a night he had dismissed Amelia's pleas to accompany her. I went, Thomas, she continued, her voice filled with a quiet pain. And I saw you there, with her, Sarah, in the private lounge, away from the main crowd. You were holding her hand. You were kissing her. Thomas felt the blood drain from his face. He had been so careful, so discreet. He had orchestrated elaborate alibis, convinced himself that Amelia was too naive, too trusting to ever suspect. The weight of his deception, of his callous disregard for her feelings, crashed down on him. Amelia, He stamped, unable to form coherent words. Don't, Thomas, she said, holding up a hand. Don't insult me with more lies. The moment I saw you, the moment I saw the way you looked at her, I knew. It wasn't just a business trip. It was never just a business trip. And after that, after everything we had, after the promises, the vows, how could I accept your money? How could I allow myself to be bought off, to become another one of your convenient transactions? I had to leave, Thomas. I had to find my own way, on my own terms. For myself, and for our child. She placed a hand on her belly, a gesture of fierce protection. Thomas stood there, a millionaire stripped bare, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. The truth, in all its brutal honesty, was a suffocating weight. He had been so arrogant, so self-absorbed, so utterly blind. He had shattered the trust of the woman he loved, dismissed her pain, and then, through the ruthless machinations of his own legal team, effectively stripped her of her financial independence, forcing her into a life of struggle, all while she carried his child. He felt a profound, aching emptiness, a desperate longing for a past he had so carelessly discarded. The redemption he so desperately needed seemed an impossible mountain to climb. Thomas left Amelia's apartment that day a changed man. The encounter had been a brutal awakening, stripping away the layers of self-deception and arrogance he had accumulated over years of unchecked success. He drove back to Manhattan, the familiar cityscape now looking alien, his own reflection in the rearview mirror, a stranger. The man who had entered Amelia's apartment was a ruthless titan of industry. The man who emerged was a bewildered, broken individual, grappling with the wreckage of his own making. The first thing he did was fire his entire legal team. He stormed into their plush offices, his fury a palpable force. "You incompetent, unethical vultures!" he roared, slamming his fist on the senior partner's polished mahogany desk. "You not only sabotaged my divorce, you actively engaged in tactics that caused immense harm to my ex-wife, the mother of my child. You froze her assets. You manipulated the legal system, all under the guise of protecting my interests. You're fired, all of you. And I'm going to ensure your professional lives are as frozen as Amelia's bank accounts." The lawyers, usually unflappable, cowered under his unprecedented wrath. Thomas didn't care about their protests. their panicked explanations. He wanted them gone. He hired a new, ethical firm, one with a reputation for integrity, and instructed them to immediately unfreeze Amelia's accounts and ensure she received every penny she was entitled to, and then some. He also set up a substantial trust fund for their unborn child, completely independent of his own volatile finances. But money, he realized, wouldn't fix the gaping wound he had inflicted. He had betrayed Amelia's trust, humiliated her, and forced her into a life of hardship while he lived in lavish comfort. The guilt was a constant companion, a heavy cloak he couldn't shed. He tried to see Amelia again, to apologize, to explain, to beg for forgiveness, but she refused his calls, ignored his texts, and when he went to her apartment, she wouldn't answer the door. He respected her boundaries, knowing he had no right to demand her time or attention. He understood that actions spoke louder than words, and his actions, until now, had been nothing short of reprehensible. He found solace, surprisingly, in the most unlikely of places: their old haunts. He visited the art galleries they used to frequent, standing before the paintings she adored, remembering her insightful observations. He walked through Central Park, recalling their quiet strolls, the way she would point out a particular bird or a blooming flower, finding beauty in the smallest details he had always overlooked. He even went to the small, independent bookstore where they had first met, remembering her infectious passion for literature. Each memory was a bittersweet pang, a reminder of what he had lost. One evening, he found himself sitting alone in his penthouse, the vast space feeling empty and cold. He looked out at the glittering city lights, the symbol of his success, and felt a profound loneliness. He picked up a photo of Amelia, taken years ago, her face radiant with happiness. He remembered the day it was taken, their honeymoon in Santorini. He had been so certain of their future then, so blind to the potential for his own destructive tendencies. He thought about the child, his child, growing inside her. A child he had almost unwittingly condemned to a life without a father, or at least a father who was present and loving. The thought ignited a fierce determination within him. He had to change, not for Amelia's forgiveness, not even for his own peace of mind, but for his child. He had to be a better man, a man worthy of the immense responsibility of fatherhood. He started by re-evaluating his entire life. He stepped back from some of his more aggressive business ventures, delegating more, creating a healthier work-life balance. He stopped chasing every deal, every acquisition, realizing that true wealth lay not in accumulating more, but in nurturing what truly mattered. He began volunteering at a local charity, anonymously, helping at a soup kitchen, experiencing a different side of life, a side far removed from the gilded cages of his own existence. He sent Amelia a letter, not a demanding one, but a heartfelt apology, pouring out his guilt, his regrets, and his newfound understanding. He didn't expect a response, and he didn't receive one. But writing it was a cathartic experience, a necessary step in his journey towards self-forgiveness. Months passed. The due date approached. Thomas was a nervous wreck, constantly checking his phone, hoping for news. He had asked Leo, his private investigator, to keep a discreet eye on Amelia. Not to intrude, but to simply inform him when she went into labor. He just wanted to know, to be there, even if it was from a distance. One morning, a call came from Leo. Amelia had been admitted to the hospital. Thomas's heart leaped into his throat. He drove to the hospital, his hands clammy on the steering wheel, a mix of terror and profound hope swirling within him. He walked into the waiting room, his billionaire status stripped away by the raw vulnerability of the moment. He saw Amelia's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, looking anxious but hopeful. Mrs. Hayes, a kind-faced woman who had always treated him with warmth, looked up and saw him. Her expression shifted from surprise to a hesitant welcome. "Thomas," she said, her voice soft. "What are you doing here?" I just wanted to be here, for Amelia, for the baby." His voice was shaky. Mr. Hayes, a stern but fair man, simply nodded, a silent acknowledgement that Thomas's presence, however unexpected, was understood. Hours later, a doctor emerged, smiling. "Congratulations, everyone. It's a healthy baby girl." A wave of pure, unadulterated joy washed over Thomas, eclipsing all the pain and guilt of the past months. He was a father. He had a daughter, a new life, a new beginning. He saw Mrs. Hayes wipe away tears of joy and Mr. Hayes offer a rare, gentle smile. He felt an overwhelming urge to see his daughter, to see Amelia. He hesitated, then asked Mrs. Hayes, Can I see them?" She looked at him, then back at the delivery room door. "Amelia, she asked for you, Thomas." His heart pounded. Amelia had asked for him. After everything. It was a small flicker of hope, a fragile seed of redemption, but it was enough. He walked towards the door, his steps uncertain, but his heart filled with a renewed sense of purpose. The journey to redemption was long, arduous, and fraught with challenges, but for his daughter, for Amelia, he was finally ready to walk it. Thomas stood at the threshold of Amelia's hospital room, his breath catching in his throat. The room was softly lit, a serene oasis amidst the sterile hospital environment. Amelia lay in the bed, looking utterly exhausted but radiant, a tiny bundle cradled in her arms. She looked up, her eyes meeting his. There was no anger, no resentment, only a quiet weariness and a profound, maternal love. "Thomas," she whispered, her voice soft. He walked to the side of the bed, his gaze fixed on the tiny face nestled against her chest. Their daughter. She was so small, so perfect, a miniature version of both of them. He felt an overwhelming surge of protectiveness, a love so fierce it almost buckled his knees. "She's beautiful, Amelia," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. Amelia offered a weak smile. "She is. Her name is Lily. Lily. A delicate, beautiful name." He reached out a hesitant finger, gently stroking the baby's soft cheek. Lily stirred, letting out a tiny, contented sigh. Thomas felt a tear trace a path down his cheek, a tear he didn't even realize he was shedding. "Amelia," he began, his voice choked with emotion. "I am so sorry. For everything. For the way I treated you. For my blindness. For allowing my lawyers to do what they did. For Sarah. For not being there for you. I know words aren't enough. But I truly am sorry." She looked at him, her gaze unwavering. "Thomas, I was so angry, so hurt. I felt so betrayed." "I know," he said, nodding. "And you had every right to be. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I hope, in time, you can find a way to let go of the anger. For Lily's sake, if not for mine." She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again, a deep sigh escaping her lips. "When I asked for you, it wasn't because I'd forgiven you, Thomas. It was because she's half you. And she deserves to know her father. A father who is present, who cares." His heart swelled with a fragile hope. "I will be, Amelia. I promise. I will be present. I will be a father to Lily, in every sense of the word. And I will do everything in my power to make amends to you. I've already fired my lawyers, unfrozen your accounts, and set up a trust fund for Lily. I'm taking a step back from work, focusing on what truly matters. I'm trying to be a different man, Amelia." She studied him, searching his eyes for sincerity. He held her gaze, offering her his raw, exposed vulnerability. "I see that," she finally said, her voice softer. "I see a difference, Thomas. And for Lily, I'm willing to try, to be civil, to co-parent." "Thank you, Amelia," he whispered, genuine gratitude washing over him. "Thank you for that." The following weeks were a delicate dance of cautious steps and tentative rebuilding. Thomas was a constant presence at the hospital, then at Amelia's apartment. He brought groceries, cooked meals, changed diapers, and read to Lily in a surprisingly gentle voice. He didn't push for anything more than shared parenthood, understanding that trust, once shattered, could only be painstakingly rebuilt, brick by painful brick. He saw the subtle shifts in Amelia's demeanor. The initial guardedness slowly gave way to moments of shared laughter over Lily's antics. He saw the way she looked at him when he gently soothed a crying Lily, a flicker of something he desperately hoped was not just gratitude, but perhaps a nascent spark of the old affection. One afternoon, as he was rocking Lily to sleep, Amelia sat beside him on the sofa, a comfortable silence settling between them. "Thomas," she said, her voice quiet, "I received the letter. Your apology." He looked at her, his heart in his throat. "And it meant a lot. To hear you acknowledge your mistakes, to hear you express genuine remorse." She paused, then continued, her gaze fixed on Lily's sleeping face. "I still have a lot of healing to do, Thomas. A lot of anger to process. But I'm willing to consider the possibility that you've truly changed. For Lily. And perhaps for us too." Thomas felt a surge of emotion, so profound it almost overwhelmed him. It wasn't a declaration of love, not a promise of instant reconciliation. It was a glimmer of hope, a fragile invitation to a future he had once believed was irretrievably lost. It was the first true seed of redemption, and he vowed with every fiber of his being that he would nurture it with unwavering dedication. The path ahead was long and uncertain, filled with challenges and obstacles. But looking at Amelia, then at his sleeping daughter, Thomas knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was no longer the arrogant millionaire who had carelessly shattered his world. He was a father, a man on a journey of redemption, and for the first time in a very long time, he felt a genuine sense of purpose, a deep and abiding love that transcended all his previous ambitions. The story of Thomas McCown was no longer about power and wealth. It was about love, forgiveness, and the arduous, beautiful journey of becoming a truly good man. The weeks bled into months, each day a small, deliberate step in Thomas's journey of transformation. Amelia, while still cautious, allowed him more access to Lily, and, by extension, to her own life. He had moved into a temporary apartment in Queens, not far from her, a conscious decision to be fully present and accessible. The grand penthouse now felt like a relic of a past life, a gilded cage he no longer desired. He embraced fatherhood with an intensity that surprised even himself. He relished the early morning feedings, the countless diaper changes, the cooing sounds Lily made when he held her close. He read every parenting book he could find, devoured articles on child development, and sought advice from Amelia's parents, who, despite their initial reservations, were slowly starting to accept his renewed presence. The dynamic between Thomas and Amelia was slowly shifting from strained civility to a comfortable camaraderie. They discussed Lily's milestones, shared parenting challenges, and even found themselves laughing over silly baby anecdotes. There were still moments of tension, lingering shadows of past hurts, but they were fewer and farther between. Amelia, seeing his consistent effort, his genuine remorse, and his unwavering dedication to Lily, began to soften. One evening, after Lily was finally asleep, Thomas and Amelia were sitting in her living room, a rare moment of quiet. "Thomas," she began, her voice hesitant, "I wanted to thank you for everything. For being here, for being such a wonderful father to Lily." He looked at her, his heart swelling. "Amelia, I should be thanking you for allowing me back into your lives, for giving me this chance." She smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes, eyes that he remembered so vividly from their early days. "It hasn't been easy, you know. But seeing you with her, seeing the change in you, it makes me believe that people can truly change." "I have changed, Amelia," he said, his voice earnest. "You and Lily have changed me. You've shown me what truly matters. All the wealth, all the power. It means nothing without love, without family." He paused, then took a deep breath. "Amelia, I know I've hurt you deeply, and I don't expect you to forget that. But I want to ask you something, if you'd even consider it." He hesitated, his gaze searching hers. "I want to rebuild our lives, Amelia, not just as co-parents, but as a family. I want to marry you again, properly, with no prenups, no lawyers, just us. I want to earn your trust back every single day. I want to be the man you deserve, the husband I should have always been." Amelia's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise, then something else. Perhaps hope, perhaps fear. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. "Thomas, that's a lot. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that." "So much has happened." "I know," he said gently. "And I'm not asking for an answer now. Just consider it. Consider the possibility. I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Because you, Amelia, and Lily, you're my world now. And I can't imagine a future without you both." She didn't respond immediately. The silence stretched, filled with unspoken emotions, with the weight of their past and the fragile promise of their future. Thomas braced himself for rejection, for her to tell him it was too much, too soon. But then she looked up, a soft smile gracing her lips, and a tear, unshed, glistened in her eye. "I'll think about it, Thomas," she whispered. "I'll think about it." It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. It was an opening, a door left slightly ajar, a testament to the power of forgiveness and the enduring strength of love. Thomas felt a profound sense of peace settle over him, a quiet joy that far surpassed any business triumph he had ever known. He knew the road ahead would be long and challenging, but for the first time in his life, he was ready for the journey, ready to face whatever came his way, hand in hand with the woman he loved and the beautiful daughter they shared. The foundation of their new life was being laid, not with bricks of ambition and wealth, but with the fragile, yet resilient mortar of redemption and unwavering love. Months turned into a year. Lily was now a bright-eyed toddler, taking her first wobbly steps, filling Amelia's small apartment with infectious laughter. Thomas was still living in Queens, his once thriving business empire now managed by a trusted team, allowing him to dedicate himself fully to Amelia and Lily. He had traded boardrooms for playgrounds, power suits for comfortable jeans, and the relentless pursuit of wealth for the simple joys of fatherhood. Amelia had indeed given him a second chance. They hadn't remarried, but they were living together again, not in the opulent penthouse, but in a larger, cozier home in a family-friendly neighborhood, a space they had chosen together. It was a home filled with love, laughter, and the undeniable presence of their shared past, both good and bad. One sunny afternoon, as Thomas pushed Lily on a swing in a local park, he saw a familiar figure approaching. Sarah. She looked different, less polished, a hint of desperation in her eyes. The ambitious gleam he remembered was gone, replaced by a weary resignation. She stopped a few feet away, her gaze shifting from Thomas to Lily, then to the happy family portrait they presented. "Thomas," she said, her voice a ghost of its former confidence. He nodded, a polite but distant acknowledgement. "Sarah, I saw you, with your family. You look happy." Her voice was tinged with a bitterness she couldn't quite conceal. "I am," he simply stated, his arm around Amelia's waist as she joined them, a watchful expression on her face. Sarah's gaze flickered to Amelia, a flicker of the old antagonism still present. "Amelia, you look, well." "I am," Amelia replied, her voice calm and firm. "Happier than I've ever been." Sarah's shoulders slumped. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, Thomas. For everything. For not telling you about Amelia, for trying to manipulate you. I was so caught up in trying to impress you, to get ahead. I lost myself." Her confession sounded hollow, a desperate attempt at absolution. Thomas looked at her, and for the first time, he saw not a villain, but a lost, misguided woman. He had been so consumed by his own ambition that he had inadvertently fostered the same ruthless drive in those around him. He had been a part of her downfall too, in a way. "Sarah," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle, "I hope you find your path, and I hope you find genuine happiness." She nodded, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. "Thank you, Thomas." She turned and walked away, a solitary figure fading into the bustling park, a stark reminder of the person Thomas used to be, and the life he had so narrowly escaped. The encounter was a final test, a moment of closure, a testament to how far Thomas had truly come. He no longer felt anger or resentment towards Sarah, only a quiet understanding. His world, once built on the unstable foundation of power and ambition, was now firmly rooted in love, family, and genuine connection. He looked at Amelia, her hand now intertwined with his. "You know," he said, a smile playing on his lips, "that cashier job actually suited you. You were surprisingly good at it." Amelia laughed, a warm, melodious sound that filled his heart. "And you, Mr. Thorne, are surprisingly good at changing diapers. Who would have thought?" They shared a look, a silent acknowledgement of their shared journey, of the trials they had faced, and the love that had emerged, stronger and more resilient than ever before. Lily, sensing the warmth between her parents, clapped her tiny hands, her infectious laughter echoing through the park. Thomas knew their story wasn't a fairy tale, devoid of scars or past hurts. It was a real-life drama, filled with complex emotions, difficult choices, and the arduous, beautiful work of forgiveness and redemption. But standing there, surrounded by the love of his family, he knew he wouldn't trade it for all the riches in the world. He was finally home. Thomas McCown, once a man defined by his wealth and ruthless ambition, had found his true fortune in the most unexpected of places. A supermarket checkout line, a modest apartment, and the unwavering love of his family. His journey from self-serving millionaire to devoted husband and father was a testament to the transformative power of humility, remorse, and the courage to rebuild. He learned that true success isn't measured in bank accounts or company valuations, but in the richness of relationships and the quiet joy of a life well lived. Amelia, with her quiet strength and unwavering integrity, had not only survived betrayal, but had also, through her resilience, guided Thomas towards his own redemption. Their daughter, Lily, was the beacon that illuminated their path, a living symbol of their renewed hope and unwavering commitment. Their story is a powerful reminder that even after the darkest storms, a new dawn can break, bringing with it the promise of a brighter, more meaningful future. It is a story of second chances, of the intricate dance between forgiveness and rebuilding, and the profound truth that love, in its purest form, can heal even the deepest wounds. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more real-life dramas that remind us of the enduring power of the human spirit.